The July 4th parade. Ryan, do you have anything else to tell us about the parade?
It's on the 4th of July.
Thank you so much. How about the carnival? How's things going with the carnival?
So, ironing out the contract.
Ironing out the contract. Very good. Very good. Okay. And anybody else have any other business announcements? Turn the floor over to Joanne Aslin, our program chair, to do, as Rick has requested, a relatively brief introduction. So, Joanne, you have the floor.
Thank you. Very brief introduction. Rick has asked that we save the time for his presentation, but Rick is the District 7890 Chairman of Water and Sanitation Projects, and he's going to speak to us about the water projects.
Thank you. Mr. President, can I move the flag so that everybody can see?
Back a little bit, not too far, please. I'll second. Please make sure you keep the eagle facing forward.
Anything else?
Only 23 more days.
I thought everybody would know what 23 meant after that. Thank you so much for having us here. What I have in front of you is a slide that gives the completed projects that we have worked on over the last 11 years in Guatemala. Before the 2006-2007 project in Cahomacha, Ellen and I were on vacation 2 years in a row. And this all started because I made up at the Rotary Club of La Antigua, exchanged business cards. When I found out that Rotary was pushing to get water and sanitation projects done, I wrote to them. They wrote back. At that time, there was what were called matching grants. They had so many they couldn't do any more, but they put me in touch with this organization called Aldea. It's formerly called Bear Horse Partners for Development, and we emailed them, and they said, we'd love to help. We had to get written permission from the Rotary Foundation to work at that time with an NGO. Because of their reputation and their financial accountability, Rotary said, no problem, you can work with them. And other clubs had worked with Aldea. So that's the history behind how this all started. So we have completed every one of these villages in blue. They're all sustainable. They're continuing to operate. In March of this year, Ellen and I visited the 3 villages of Shesachbin, Koholya, and Pachach. There will be a pronunciation quiz at the end, okay? Just to see that you're staying awake. We are now at the end of the Rotary year 17-18. It ends with Bill's 23 days left. And we're trying to raise the funds for Pamazul, Vista Hermosa, and San Vicente. Why even get involved with the water and sanitation project? I stop here every time to tell you, I think, an unbelievable fact, that 30,000 people every single day all over the world die because of water-related illnesses. 90% of them are children under the age of 5 years old. That's ridiculous. Another thing that a lot of Rotarians don't know about is that about 14 years ago, when the Rotary International president, Jonathan Majiagbi, who was from Nigeria, he established a goal that every Rotary Club every year work on some kind of a clean water and sanitation project. Why hasn't that been at the forefront? Well, as you've all seen and know, Rotarians do, that our international acclaim now has been to try to eradicate polio around the world. And the posters and the ads say we're this close to eradicating polio. We're this close to eliminating water and sanitation projects. So certainly we want to eradicate polio, but you're going to start to see a movement in Rotary to everybody get involved with one of these projects. And I don't mean to say that Guatemala is the only place in the world that needs it. It just happened that my connections originally with this Rotary Club and what's been happening, it just keeps moving very well. On the tables, I've left what I call our track record. That first year, we did the village of Cahomacha. We had 12 Rotary clubs. My home club of Manchester, Connecticut is in Area 6. I believe Denise, your East Windsor is in that. So her club has now for 11 years in a row helped support this. And then I went out, like I'm doing now, and I presented to Rotary clubs. And last year, for the 3 villages that I mentioned, we had 36 Rotary clubs from 6 districts, not just 7890 contributing, and now we have over 7,600 people with fresh running potable water to their households. For the first 7 years, we worked, as I said, with Aldea, or BPD they call it in Guatemala. It was founded by this Dr. Carol Bearhorst, the U.S. physician who taught at Tulane University. And when he died, his family and his employees continued the same organization. And if you notice, 67 was when it was started. Last year was their 50th anniversary, so they've been around a long time. The Rotary WASRAG, they call it, the Water and Sanitation Rotarian Action Group, encourages building alliances with local NGOs, and that's what Aldea is, a non-government organization, because of their familiarity with the local conditions, the culture, the politics, and I'm going to add to that the language. Now, most of you, I assume, know that most of Central America is, or all of it, is Spanish-speaking. Well, true, that's the language of the country. But when you drive an hour and a half to 2 hours up into the mountainous areas where the indigenous Mayans live, they speak Quechical, Quiche, Mam, and other indigenous languages that aren't even written. Aldea has a staff of, I think, it's 12 people. 11 of them are of indigenous descent. So they can converse with these people, especially the elders, a lot better than trying to struggle with Spanish. And interestingly enough, on Friday, the week that we were there, we visited the village of Cojuya, and everything was done, and I'll show you the ceremony, everything that's going on, the presentations. Every time they spoke, everything was in Quechical. So somebody from Aldea, and several members went up, translated from Quechical to Spanish, and Paco, the executive director, translated from Spanish to English, so we knew what was going on. And when I was speaking, it went the other way. Then on Monday of the next week, we visited the other two villages, and they're only about 5 kilometers away, and everything was in Spanish. So it all depends on which pocket of the population they're working with. So I'm going to show you now an example of where or how the Rotary money that's donated gets so effectively used. And again, these are the 3 villages that were finished, funded, and are sustaining now in Guatemala. At the beginning of a Rotary year, usually in August, I get from Paco a budget that we write back and forth about, mostly based on what we've been able to obtain in contributions in the previous year. And my hopeful thinking is Rotary clubs will continue to give what they have given in the past, and I keep trying to get more clubs. So that's how the budget is set. So last year, if you noticed here, we have 6 districts contributing $32,000 plus. When that money got sent to the foundation matches it 50 cents on the dollar. So we got from the foundation, if you want to call it, free money of $16,000. It's not free, it's our money, because I hope all of you do contribute to the foundation. And here's another reason why. They hold our money for 3 years and then they give it back. And these global grants are structured for larger projects, and the incentive is that the foundation is going to help support it even more than the previous matching grants. If a district gives funds, and our 7890 has given a minimum of $10,000 every year, they match it dollar for dollar. And if you notice, I had another district, believe it or not, this is in Seattle. I'll talk to you about Seattle.
Oh, we're not going there.
Two Rotary clubs, Seattle, Washington, and Lake Forest Park. Their district last year gave us $1,500.
Seattle 4.
Seattle 4. Why is it called 4? It was the 4th Rotary Club in the world ever found. Yeah, they don't want to drop the 4. They feel that's so important. Everything they sell. So anyway, we got $11,500 from the foundation, just like that. So we started, if you will, in the bank with $23,000. The total grant then was around $71,000. When I show you the 4 component parts that every household gets, one of them are stoves. And the stoves I put into the first global grant application that I wrote, and the reviewer wrote back to me and said, we cannot match those funds in the global grant. And I said, why? And she wrote that stoves are not considered to be directly related to water and sanitation. So what we were doing, and we had done it for 7 years, is the money was going directly to Aldea. What was happening then is once we filled up the global grant, which is from the green line up, The remaining checks from clubs were paid to Aldea, and the stoves got done. And I'll tell you why later as to how important that is. Before I leave this, notice the municipalities and the local residents, they have a value, a large value of in-kind service and labor. The municipality is like, they call them districts, and we would call it counties here. We deal with the mayor. We don't deal with the federal government in any way at all. And they usually provide an engineer to design the whole system. And part of the global grant that I write, if any of you are engineers or interested, all the engineering drawings and details are in here, as well as, that's a global grant in writing, 65 pages. So I do all the background work, get it done, approved, and then I just look for clubs to help support it. The model that Aldea has worked out is such that they tell these people that the money you're going to get, or Rotary will supply, I should say, they don't get it, is going to pay one time only for the materials. All of the labor you have to do. So the men and the women do everything. And they're told, and part of the grant says they're going to appoint one person as a treasurer in each village. And they have then a monthly collection, and I'm talking about $1, $1.50 a week, so that if anything breaks, it has to be repaired, extended, they know how to do it, maintain it. So they're told it's one time only from Rotary. So they have to put in quite a bit of sweat and equity. These are a few facts about these villages. Notice 2 of them had 50 families, and 1 had 40. So when I talk about the 4 component parts in a minute, every household gets all 4 parts. Now, another fact. Before we do the projects, the women and the children have to walk 20 minutes each way to obtain water from springs or streams, and they have to do it 4 to 5, 6 times a day. So half their day is spent, what we do, by just turning on the faucet. And when you see the color of what they have, it's nothing like this. It has to be boiled. And then after making presentations to some 20, 30 clubs every year, this is June of last year, we have a check presentation. And this June, it's June 21st, it's a Thursday, at the Manchester, Connecticut Rotary Club. And any and every club who has contributed to these next 3 villages, they're invited. They can present their check, and we have a bit of a ceremony, if you will, with, I think I have 5 or 6, 7 district governors, past, present, and future, attending. Because with almost 50% of our district contributing to these projects, it's almost become a signature project for our district. And I know Dave Mangs is very proud of what we've been doing for 11 years. And we represent about 13 to 15% of BPD's annual budget, so we're a very integral part of them. So let's go to Central America. Guatemala is just south of Mexico. We stay in La Antigua, we get picked up, and then we drive up to these villages, and it's an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours to get there. When I show you the pictures of the homes that these people live in, they're really meager construction. You know, mud brick, tin roofs, bamboo siding, you know, very primitive. They've lived like this for thousands of years. But the whole country isn't like that. Where we stay in La Antigua, there's some beautiful churches and government buildings. That's the National Palace. And of course, the bigger cities, they're much more modern, if you will. What's the terrain like? You've heard this on the news, haven't you? Right? This year, in March, this is Volcán del Fuego. I took those pictures from the rooftop of where we stay. And of course, at night, if you go up there, we could see, you know, red lava shooting up. Now it's just a mess. I mean, there are hundreds of people that are still missing. It's just a shame. Luckily, we've been in contact with the Rotarians and the people from Aldea. None of them or their families have been affected by it, except the fact that there's like that much black ash everywhere. They've sent us pictures of them using snow shovels trying to clean it up. It's a mess. There are many, many dormant volcanoes, but there are several that are active, such as Fuego. The roads, when you get towards the end, the last 15, 20 minutes, it depends, are like this. So you got to go up in a 4-wheel drive truck. These are really remote mountainous areas. When we arrive, it's a day of celebration. And I hope you can tell by the expression of the people on the bottom here, holding their ears, what's going on. Those are firecrackers and fireworks that they're shooting off in hour by hour. I don't mean Ellen and mine and the Rotarians that go with us or Aldea. It's all the Rotary clubs who have sponsored these. We're greeted by these smiling faces of these kids who don't have to spend half their day with their mother carrying water. And the first thing that happens is they have a bit of a ceremony, and these three pictures are taken at the 3 different villages that we visited this year. Now, if you notice, there's some green stuff on the ground here. The first year when we finished, the day after we went to Cohomacha, we had brunch with the Rotarians and the people from Aldea. And their first question to me was, were there fresh green pine needles on the ground? So I took out my digital camera and I scrolled back and I said, yeah, why? And they said, that is the indigenous Mayans' red carpet. And the theory is they don't want visitors' feet to get dusty or dirty. You're walking above the dirt on the green pine needles. And in my pictures, you're going to see them everywhere. So the first order of business is I present to each of the villages, and this happens to be their water committee, a plaque that's engraved. I have them made in Fort Lauderdale, and we bring them down. Each village gets one. I'll show you a close-up later. And then they give the microphone to me for a little bit, and we give them some items. Because the first year when we were going to Cohomacha, before we went, Ellen got in touch with one of their employees in Aldea and asked, is there anything else we can bring besides these plaques? And they said that the schools have no supplies, no crayons, no pencils. So, being a former school teacher, Ellen in August goes out and buys 4 suitcases filled with stuff. And we have one of those little luggage scales. You know, you get up to 49.8 pounds, all right? So, how do we get the money for that? We bring back handicrafts that some of these indigenous people make. They're beautifully colorful, woven things. There's necklaces, there's water bottle holders, scarves, pocketbooks. We ask for, most of them, a donation of $10 each. Some are a little more expensive, so those are $25. That money goes to pay for next year's school supplies and the plaques. Now, you'll notice there's some, well, we also get involved with the dictionary project in my Manchester club. You do too? They make an Anglais Español version. So Jeff Knabb in my club has been donating for years, and they don't have one dictionary, so we bring 4 or 5, whatever we can bring to them. Now, football, of course, is the world's favorite sport. We call it soccer. And these boys touch these like they're gold. So don't think that the Patriots were the first people involved with Deflategate, all right? I don't bring them down filled with air. I deflate every one of them. I put rubber bands around them, and we stuff them in the suitcase. And then the first morning, first day I'm there, I'm pumping all these up. And for the girls, you know, we bring down basketballs and playground balls and stuff. So Deflategate started with us. Then they start to do things. They give us gifts to bring back to the Rotary clubs who have contributed in the past, whether they're banners or like a certificate of appreciation. They don't have much, believe me, but they make some beautiful hand-woven tapestries. Here's one that they gave to us, and that one I think Ellen has displayed in front of her handicrafts. Then the kids put on usually some kind of traditional dances. Then we go visit the 4 parts, and this is where it's really important. This is where the money goes. The first is bringing running water into their homes. Look at the color of that water. You don't know what's happening upstream, right? Whose garbage or whose clothes were washed and what was in it, so it has to be boiled. How do they get the water? Well, they carry it. And a couple of years ago in the village of Sakia, they put one on my head that the women carry, filled with water. That was too big for us to bring home. But we did bring back one of the small ones. And you can see the girls down here, how they're 10, 11 years old carrying them. And since Joanne was the instigator of getting me involved here, I'm going to ask her to be my assistant and pick that up. But I'll warn you, it weighs 25 pounds. It's filled with water.
So you don't have to put it in there.
You don't have to put it on your head, but just try to lift it up and see what it's like. Yes, it is really heavy. Yeah.
How far do they walk?
Sometimes
20 minutes?
20 minutes each way. You know, some villages it was 45 minutes, and it's not flat ground like maybe a golf course. We're talking about hills like this, and they walk with flip-flops and bare feet. And they're carrying that on their head. They got their kids strapped to their back, and they got their laundry here. So you can imagine how appreciative they are when they have these done. And I mentioned, look at the men and the women do all the labor, digging the trenches, carrying the pipes, the rebars. we're given the honor of cutting the ribbon. In this picture here, you can see right in that area there's water coming out of a water spout. Usually the villages are working with Aldea about a year and a half in advance of them getting approval for a global grant. And they're told the money that Rotary gives is going to pay for the whole system. The water will be brought to your household with a spout. If you want one of these 3-part sinks, save money. It costs them about $25. So there's a carrot in front of the horse that they have to have some sharing also. When I say $25, that may sound like a pretty incidental cost for most of us. But when you put it in perspective that most of the men who are farmers earn $17.50 a week, average, that's a lot of money. And add that to the fact when you see the stoves, they have to put in anywhere from $60 to $75. So it's $100 they have to save and put in. So part of the global grant says that we're not going to pay for those, but they have to put something in too. And then here's the completed distribution tank, or 2 of them. And in this picture in the bottom, you can see the rooftops way in the background. This is usually constructed about 200 feet in elevation above the village, so everything goes by gravity. It's a simple system, so they can take care of it, and there's very few moving parts. Part of the grant also is that they're going to put in a chlorination system. And one person has a test kit that they have to pay for, and they have to test every week or every few days to see that the water is okay. They put tablets in there, and the water gets chlorinated. Now, these are pictures of the finished mounted plaques on all 3 villages. You can see the wet cement around here. And here's a close-up. And I can brag about East Windsor being right there. I hope next year we could put East Longmeadow. And every club gives differing amounts. It doesn't matter. There's no maximum. There's no minimum. Some clubs are bigger than yours. Some are even smaller. Some can make more money, less money. Whatever a club would like to give, we put it into the formula. And don't forget, every dollar gets matched by 50 cents, and you get the credit as being a part of this water and sanitation project. So last year, these are 36 Rotary clubs from 6 different districts. And here's one of the clean sinks that Cesar Camino casts that they have to put in some money. The second component are gray water filters. These take the water, the grease, the dirt, the soap, and the oils from cooking and cleaning and separates it. Because if they let that just go on the ground, and we were at a village where that happened, they hadn't finished, you're right, it smells, right? It turns black and you get animals and insects. It's disgusting. So from the sink, it goes through, they call it a sumideros, or a gray water filter. We'd probably call it a grease trap. Notice in the bottom left, the white stuff. That's soap and oil rising to the surface. Part of the grant says that they're going to scoop out that stuff about once a week, depending on the usage and the size of the family, and then they bury it. And then the gray water, or the sort of dirty water, goes out, and they put that into a pit and goes back into the ground. In those villages where the water source, and 90% of them are springs coming out of rocks, not an open stream, because those are polluted, the water source is lower than the distribution tank. So they have to pump the water up to the tank, and then it goes by gravity. So they have to put in an electric pump, and that's run or backed up by a diesel generator, and there's a diesel tank. Why not use just electricity? Well, they have some electricity, but when they have a power outage, it's not 3 to 4 hours. It's 3 to 4 days, sometimes a week at a time. So they wouldn't have water. How do they pay for the diesel fuel? Well, they put a water meter at every household. So if you use a lot of water, that meter's spinning around. The next month, the treasurer who's put into the grant, he or she then goes and collects more money from that family because they use more water. So it's teaching them conservation. The third component are the vented, improved pit latrines. And this is a completed one. This is what it's like before. Yeah. Pardon? Talk about privacy. One smart Rotarian, when I showed this bottom picture, said, "Oh, but that one's better ventilated." It's 4 sheets of plastic, a hole in the ground. Oh, it's disgusting. So, again, Cesar Camino here casts a square part that fits over the hole in the ground that the men dig, and then he also casts the toilet. And I'm not sure if it's an American Standard or a Kohler. We've been asked to bring some of those back and put them here. No, those things are solid concrete. So the men dig the hole, 5 meters deep, which is about 17 or 18 feet. Then they put this top over it, which essentially seals it off from odors. And then they build, we would call it an outhouse. They call it a latrinas. And it has a roof on it. There's an orange pipe here. There's a yellow one back here. Those vent the odors up above most people height. And then depending on the person or the family, they put on curtains or doors and whatnot. And every once in a while, they have toilet paper. Oop, I got to keep moving. I'm sorry. The fourth component are the stoves. And this is one of the completed ones. This is what I meant about their meager construction. And the Mayans, for thousands of years, would build a pedestal inside. And this is jet black. Look at the color of that soot. Aldea sent us a study that if these children are exposed to this smoke on a daily basis, which they would be strapped to the mother's back, it causes such irreparable harm to their lungs that they can't absorb the nutrients in food. And that's probably one of the reasons why the Mayans are so short. Here's a fully grown adult woman. These are 3 of the stoves. We're cutting the ribbon. Notice the vent pipe is insulated so the kids can't get burned. This cook surface in the middle is the hot area. So if they have something boiling, they can bring it off to the side, and there's less of a chance of it spilling and burning a kid or getting burned with the wood. And this is most important. They have a little firebox that uses 70% less wood. So in addition to not have to be spending 4 hours a day carrying that, they're cutting less wood and they're spending less time doing that. We have dinner with the people from Rotary as well as Aldea, and they have a whole big ceremony. Everybody has lunch with us, and these are the women who cook. I started, when we entered the village, let's say, by showing you the pictures of the kids. These are the women who for decades have been carrying these things. It really shows on their faces. It's a tough, tough life. They come up to us, they hug us with tears in their eyes, and they say, gracias, mucho gracias. They are so, so thankful. What are the lessons learned? Well, these have just an enormous impact on their health and well-being. And Paco can't give me exact figures, but roughly within a year, there's a 60% decline in intestinal diseases and diarrhea. Similarly, with the problems of eye infections and respiratory problems because of the smoke. This also means that the women now have the time to do more of the weaving, the handicrafts. They can then go to the market. We're told they now have some money, and they come back and they have a little more say in the family income. Usually it's the father or the male who says, I earned all the money. Now the women have a bit more say, he's telling me. I'm going to skip through some of these because I know I'm being flagged to get done. But I just want to point out Guatemala has the 3rd highest rate of malnutrition in the world. These last few slides talk about some of the recognition we've received from Rotary International, and I'm not going to get into them. I'll leave questions. But we've also had 5 previous global grants. Because of these, I was given the Service Above Self Award 4 years ago, and that's the highest award Rotary gives for an individual. That's only given to 150 people a year throughout the whole world. So to me, it's quite an honor, and I joined Rotary to help others, but when you do get recognized, boy, it's really humbling and quite an honor. Rotary has now identified Guatemala as one of 5 countries where they're putting money in to teach the kids, especially the girls, about water, sanitation, and hygiene. This is this year's global grant. We've got 2 grants, I should say, in 3 villages. We now have 7 different districts I hope are contributing. I've got more DDF funding. We're starting off with $22,000 in the bank. The total is like $160,000. So I'll complete my presentation with this picture of Douglas Guerra that I took that very first year. They say in Spanish, sin agua no hay vida. We would say, without water, there is no life. So I thank you, and I would welcome any questions if we got a minute or 2.
Question?
Yes.
How does a club like ours, since you have the global fund, do you submit the global? Do we have to submit individual global funding applications, or is it all done through yours?
No, the application is complete, and when I do send in the application, I don't know exactly how much each club will give. Sometimes it varies from year to year. So I put it all under the Manchester, Connecticut Club. And as clubs give the funds, I send in a form with their check to the foundation, and that's why we had 36 clubs last year. You don't have to do anything, I hate to say it, other than write a check.
Now, we write a check to enter the program. Do we have to do that for X number of years, or?
No, there's no commitment. I mean, there are some clubs who have said they had a very bad fundraising experience one year and they couldn't afford to give. Fine. The next year, hopefully they came back and they do give to us, or to the project, not to me. And your check is written to the Rotary Foundation. And for every dollar you give, it gets matched by 50 cents. It doesn't come to the Manchester Club, it doesn't come to me, it goes to the foundation. You also get Paul Harris points. So if you gave $1,000, you could give a Paul Harris award to one person. If you gave $500, in over 2 years, you get another Paul Harris.
But you would mail it to him.
Right, you mail the check to me, because there's a form that thank you, there's a donor form that I have to identify which club, which project, the grant and all that.
Now, can the club take as credit that contribution that they make to your global grant? In other words, I have, I'm going to be president next year.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we're going to do it, but if we did, we contribute, say, $1,000. It goes under your global fund. Can we include that in our annual Rotary Club report that we
Sure.
contributed?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
Under the district grant?
Yeah, you also get credit for a presidential citation. You get credit for working on an international project, which is one of the 6 areas that you're supposed to work on. There was another question back?
What's the average amount of, say, clubs in our district contribute?
Well, I don't do it by, last year I took what was given by Rotary clubs and I divided it by 36 and it was like $1,400. But again, that is not what you have to give. There are some clubs who give as much as $5,000. They have a big commitment to working. Others may give $500. It's up to you what you'd like to give. Right, but that's the average. I think it was $1,440. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, and I can certainly give you more information if you'd like.
Hang on 1 minute.
Yep.
As you all know, and I did tell Rick that we donate a book to the East Long Meadow Public Library, the children's section, and Rick has chosen Officer Buckle and Gloria by Peggy Rothman. To you, sir.
Thank you.
And your name will be
Inscribed.
Your name will be inscribed in the book.
Okay.
Thank you ever so much.
Bless you. All right.
Okay. And if anybody wants to look at the table later on, let's see, I got to figure out what we're doing now, but I will. And so we are about at the end. And Rick, when you do go back over to your seat, what I'm going to ask you to do as a visiting Rotarian,
Okay.
I would like you to lead us. Oh, you want to take your water? Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
That way I won't spill it on Al's microphone. Would you all please rise? And Rick, would you please lead us in the 4-way test?
The 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First.
Is it the truth?
Second.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third.
Will it build goodwill and better friendship?
Fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?